Hello, and welcome back to another episode of our Think Different Prep series. This episode, we're going to be focusing on why you compete and who you become from competing. So most athletes think prep is about building a physique, but the deeper truth is this: prep is building a self, your motivation, your identity, your sense of self. Nothing gets exposed more brutally than in a deficit of extreme depths. You don't meet a new version of yourself in prep. Prep shows you the version you've been avoiding or the version you've been building. Today, we break down one of the most important psychological pillars of prep and physique development: identity anchoring, motivational quality, and sense of self. Why you compete determines how you suffer, not if, but how. Suffering is an integral part of bodybuilding and physique development. How you suffer, though, changes the game. How you handle pressure, how stable you stay emotionally, whether you finish the season or break midway through. Your reason drives your resilience. Your identity determines your behaviors. This episode shows you how to anchor both. So today we cover intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, the anchored self model applied to prep, why identity built on validation collapses, the continuum of motivation, how coherence between self and action creates resilience, and why you don't find yourself in prep, you build yourself through it. So understanding the quality of your motivation determines everything. There are two types of competitors: those who compete to express self and those who compete to escape self. Extrinsic motivation sounds a lot like the following: I want attention. I want to be seen. I want to prove people wrong. I want to feel worthy. Value is placed outside of self. Intrinsic and integrated motivation sounds a lot more like: this is who I am. This is the process that brings out my best. I am a competitor by nature. I love the desire and the idea of competing against others for the best of myself. I'm competing because the act makes me better, not the outcome alone. Extrinsic motivation collapses under pressure. Intrinsic motivation sharpens under pressure. This is self-determination theory in real time. The anchored self model in prep. Your identity can be anchored in two places: externally anchored identity, which is validation seeking, status, applause, placements, social comparison. Internally anchored identity: principles, discipline, integrity, standards, effort, and ownership. Externally anchored athletes break when they get tired, they get less attention, they aren't praised, their body doesn't change fast enough. Their gratitude, their approval, their sense of self, their self identity is all outwards. It is externalized. It is not within themselves to control. Internally anchored athletes remain stable because their identity is self-generated and self-fulfilling, not externally rented. Prep exposes which one you are and which one you have built. So why validation-based identity collapses? When your identity is built on being shredded, being admired, being the fit one, being the competitor people talk about, then every setback becomes a threat to who you are as a person. You don't just fear failure. You fear identity collapse and destruction. This is why people binge after shows, people quit after one bad week, people melt emotionally when physique changes slow down. The identity wasn't anchored internally. It was based on an external image or thought or approval. Prep destroys images, but it reveals identities. So understanding the motivation continuum from self-determination theory. According to self-determination theory, motivation progresses across a continuum. From the far left, we have amotivation, basically meaning non-motivated at all. But then we move into the external factors. We have external regulation. doing it for approval or appearance. Then we have introjected regulation, which is doing it to avoid guilt or shame. Identified regulation, doing it because you see its personal value. Integrated regulation, doing it because it aligns with who you are. And where it becomes most reinforcing, most driven, most supportive is intrinsic motivation, doing it because you genuinely love the process of it. Very, very few people in the modern 21st century of bodybuilding truly do it for intrinsic motivation. Most competitors sit at level 1 or 2, meaning the far left. It is especially in the lower tier amateur ranks of people trying to experience a prep. It's something I experience or need to do before XYZ. They're very externally regulated, very externally driven. Their identity is about the idea of being seen on a stage, getting their check-in photos, getting their comp photos, getting their photo shoots done. Elite competitors, stable, emotionally sound, consistent, resilient, driven competitors are levels 4 and 5, integrated and intrinsic. Why does this matter? The more internal your motivation, the more internally anchored your identity, the more stable your behaviors, and the less emotionally sensitive you are to experiences. The more external your motivation, the more emotional your behavior becomes. Prep punishes emotional behavior, emotional reactivity, impulsive decision making. Coherence between self and action. You become unstoppable when your identity and your actions point in the same direction. This is coherence. This is called congruence. Athletes with coherence execute more consistently, break less under stress, don't negotiate with themselves or others, stay grounded without validation, don't crumble when progress slows, are able to delay what they want now for the things they want in the future. They are gambling on their present with the potential outcome they achieve with these sacrifices in the future. Their behavior is anchored in identity, not emotion. This is the essence of the matter mentality. Act from who you are, not who you are trying to impress. Are you doing this for the love of the game and the love of the process, or are you doing it for the social appearance of being on stage? Every year, you can almost guarantee there are going to be two different types of archetype athletes. Externally anchored, needing hype, consistent praise, need eyes on at all times. When the spotlight disappears, their effort disappears with it. As soon as prep gets hard, they fold because their identity isn't strong enough to carry the fatigue and the exhaustion that comes with it. What people don't understand is the prefrontal cortex is the filtration process of the brain. It is the part that works on executive function, goal orientation. When we mask and hide parts of who we are, the things that we have repressed and buried, the energy required to sustain that starts to dissipate. We start to break. And eventually, with a prep that goes on long enough and a condition that gets deep enough, those things that we've repressed and haven't dealt with eventually start to rear their head. And who we truly are starts to come out. When your identity isn't strong enough to carry those lies, eventually you break down. Then we have the internally anchored athlete. Their standard is self-generated and self-fulfilling. It is internalized. They don't need hype. They don't need validation. They don't need applause. The amount of time that they are able to pass between receiving recognition and doing the action is far more substantial than the externally anchored athlete. Their identity is built upon principles, not perception or appearance. These athletes finish seasons others would quit, not because they're genetically superior, but because their identity is unshakable and grounded in the foundations of who they are as a person. So ask yourself this before starting a prep. Why am I doing this? Is this who I want to be or who I want people to think I am? Am I chasing a physique or am I avoiding a problem or a feeling in my life? Would I still compete if no one posted about it? Are my actions aligned with my principles, aligned with my identity? If the answers feel uncomfortable, good. That is the doorway to identity building. That is the direction that you must take before you start prepping. Figuring these things out ensures a much more stable, coherent, consistent, and motivational prep experience. To round it out, competing doesn't reveal who you are. It reveals who you've built yourself to be. The athletes who stay anchored in principles, in values, who act from identity, who choose discipline and systemization over attention and perception, they not only improve, they evolve every season and increase the probability that winning becomes the likely outcome. The important point to understand, you don't find yourself in a prep. Preps reveal what you built before you started.